The fluorescent lights in Warehouse 47 buzzed like dying insects, casting harsh shadows across towers of cardboard boxes that stretched toward the corrugated ceiling. At 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday that felt like the longest day of my life, I was bent over a conveyor belt, scanning barcodes with hands that once typed code worth millions. My name is Evan Grant, and 3 months ago, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. I was wrong. Rock bottom has a basement. The scanner beeped its monotonous rhythm as I processed another shipment of dog food, baby diapers, and someone's impulse purchase of a 20-pound bag of gummy bears. My back ached from the repetitive motion, and my safety vest reeked of industrial disinfectant and desperation. "Grant!" The voice of Gordon Gordy Patterson, my supervisor, cut through the warehouse din like a rusty blade. "You're behind quota again. Pick up the pace or pick up your final paycheck." I looked up at Gordy's sneering face, all jowls and petty authority, and felt the familiar surge of sarcastic commentary that had become my only defense mechanism. "Sorry, Gordy, I'll try to scan faster. Maybe if I squint really hard, the barcodes will surrender." "Smart mouth won't save your job, college boy." Gordy spat the words like they tasted bad. "We got 20 guys who'd kill for your position." College boy. If only he knew that this college boy had once written logistics software that streamlined supply chains for Fortune 500 companies. If only he knew that the very warehouse management system he used to track my pathetic productivity bore traces of algorithms I'd helped develop years ago. But Gordy didn't know, and I wasn't about to tell him. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. The divorce papers were final 3 months ago. Judge Morrison had split our assets down the middle, which sounded fair until you realized that our assets were mostly mine to begin with. Lisa got the house we'd bought with my software consulting money, half of our savings, and my dignity. I got $30,000 and the privilege of starting over at 45. "You're broke and irrelevant now," she'd texted me the day she moved her 28-year-old personal trainer boyfriend into what used to be our bedroom. Devon Carter, all muscles and hair gel, had been giving my wife private sessions for months before I caught them. Do you ever say things you can't take back? Would you have walked away after hearing this? The memory of that afternoon still burned. I'd come home early from a client meeting, excited to share news about a potential contract, and found them on our kitchen counter. Devon's gym bag on the floor, Lisa's yoga pants draped over the chair where I ate breakfast every morning. "Evan!" Lisa had scrambled for her clothes, not even bothering to look ashamed. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I'd said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Because it looks like my wife is having intimacy with her trainer on the granite countertops I paid for." Devon, to his credit, had tried to apologize. "Man, I'm sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't know she was married," I'd interrupted. The wedding ring didn't give it away? Or maybe the family photos on every surface of this house?" That's when Lisa found her voice and her venom. "Don't blame Devon. This is about us, Evan. We've been over for months." "Funny. You didn't mention that when you signed the refinancing papers last week." The argument that followed was surgical in its cruelty. Lisa had been planning this for months, consulting lawyers, moving money, building her case for why she deserved everything and I deserved nothing. She painted me as a workaholic who ignored her needs, a man who cared more about code than companionship. Some of it was even true. But standing in that warehouse at 2:30 a.m., scanning items that other people would receive tomorrow while I struggled to pay for ramen noodles, I couldn't help but think about the cosmic joke of it all. The woman who called me irrelevant was now living off money I'd earned in a house I'd bought with a man who probably couldn't spell irrelevant if his life depended on it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. "Saw your car at the warehouse. Hope you're doing well. M. Mark, my old business partner." The only person from my previous life who'd bothered to check on me since the divorce became public knowledge. Mark Daniels, brilliant programmer, loyal friend, and the co-creator of the software that was supposed to make us both rich. That software, LogiFlow Pro, we'd called it, a supply chain optimization program that could reduce shipping costs by 30% and delivery times by half. We'd built it 3 years ago, sold a few licenses to small companies, then watched it gather digital dust as bigger clients went with established competitors. "The market isn't ready for us," Mark had said back then. "We're ahead of our time. Ahead of our time, behind on our bills. Story of my life." Another text from Mark. "Can we talk soon? Something important." I typed back, "Working nights now, free during the day. I'll call tomorrow. It's good news for once." Good news. I'd almost forgotten what that felt like. In the past 3 months, good news was finding a parking spot close to the warehouse entrance or discovering that the vending machine had given me correct change. The rest of my shift passed in a haze of barcodes and back pain. At 6 a.m., I clocked out and walked to my beat-up Honda Civic, the only car I could afford after Lisa took our SUV as part of the settlement. The morning sun painted the industrial landscape in shades of rust and regret, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was my life now. Permanent night shift, permanent exhaustion, permanent irrelevance. I drove to my studio apartment in a complex that advertised affordable luxury but delivered affordable squalor. The walls were thin enough that I knew my neighbor's Netflix preferences and bathroom schedule. The kitchen was a hot plate and a mini fridge. The view was of the parking lot and a dumpster that the garbage company forgot to empty half the time. But it was mine, and nobody could take it away from me. I collapsed onto my air mattress. I hadn't been able to afford a real bed yet, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like either a map of Texas or a very sad elephant. My checking account had $240 in it. Rent was due in 2 weeks. The warehouse paid just enough to keep me alive, but not enough to actually live. Lisa was right. I was broke and irrelevant now. My phone rang at 2 p.m., jarring me from the kind of sleep that felt more like a temporary end. Mark's name appeared on the cracked screen. Evan? Buddy? Where are you right now? Home. Why? I need to see you, in person, right now. Something in his voice made me sit up. Mark was usually laid back, the kind of guy who said no worries when the building was on fire. This was different. What's going on? Not over the phone. Where can we meet? I gave him my address, and he said he'd be there in 20 minutes. I used the time to make myself presentable, which mostly involved finding clean clothes and running a wet comb through my hair. Mark arrived in a Tesla Model S, which seemed like a cruel joke given my current transportation situation. He'd always been the better businessman of our partnership, better at reading markets and timing investments. While I'd gotten married and comfortable, he'd stayed single and hungry. Jesus, Evan, he said when he saw me. You look terrible. Thanks. That's exactly what every man wants to hear. No, I mean... He gestured vaguely at my appearance. When's the last time you bought new clothes? When's the last time you lived on warehouse wages? Mark's expression softened. Right. Sorry. Listen, we need to talk, and you're going to want to sit down for this. We sat on my 2 folding chairs, the only furniture in my living room. Mark pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Remember LogiFlow Pro? Our software? Yeah, I remember. It's been gathering dust for 2 years. Not exactly. Mark opened the folder. I kept developing it after you got distracted with the divorce, made some improvements, fixed some bugs, added new features. Okay. I wasn't sure where this was going. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Meridian Logistics. They're the 3rd largest shipping company in North America. I know who they are. They wanted to buy LogiFlow Pro, the whole thing. Exclusive rights, source code, everything. My heart started beating faster. For how much? Mark pulled out a contract and set it on the folding table between us. $12 million. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the contract, at the number written in both digits and words, at the signatures at the bottom. 12 million, I repeated. Your 60% comes to 7.2 million after taxes and fees. I looked up at Mark, certain this was some kind of cruel joke. My 60%? You wrote most of the original code. We agreed on the split from day one. I've got the partnership papers to prove it. He showed me another document, our original agreement from 3 years ago. There it was, in black and white. Evan Grant, 60% ownership of LogiFlow Pro and all derivative works. This is real? The money hits your account tomorrow morning. I stood up so fast that the folding chair tipped over. Tomorrow morning? Mark, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? I tried to find you, but you'd gone ghost after the divorce. Your old phone was disconnected, you'd moved out of the house, and Lisa sure as hell wasn't going to help me track you down. I finally had to call around to temp agencies until I found someone who knew someone who'd seen you at the warehouse. $7.2 million. The number bounced around in my head like a pinball, hitting every memory of the past 3 months. Every humiliation, every moment of desperation, every time I'd counted change to buy groceries. Evan, you okay? I started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind of hysterical cackling that happens when the universe reveals its sense of humor. Here I was, living in a studio apartment that smelled like industrial cleanser and defeat, working nights in a warehouse for minimum wage, and I was about to become a multimillionaire. I'm sitting here in a safety vest, I said, gesturing to the reflective orange garment draped over my chair. 3 hours ago, I was scanning barcodes and getting yelled at by a man who thinks algorithm is a type of dance. And you're telling me I'm rich? Filthy rich, Mark confirmed. The wire transfer goes through at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I thought about Lisa, probably at home with Devon, planning their future with my money. I thought about her text. You're broke and irrelevant now. I thought about the smug satisfaction in her voice when she'd walked away with everything I'd worked for. Does anyone else know about this? Just you, me, and the lawyers. Why? No reason. But I was already thinking ahead, already planning. Mark, I need you to keep this quiet for a few more days. Don't tell anyone, don't post about it on social media, don't even tell your girlfriend. Why? Because I want to enjoy being irrelevant for just a little bit longer. At exactly 9:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from First National Bank. I was sitting in my Honda Civic in the warehouse parking lot, having just finished what would be my final night shift, though Gordy didn't know it yet. Account deposit $7,200,000. Available balance $7,200, the $247.18, $7,200,247.18. The 18 cents was what remained of my previous life. I stared at the screen until the numbers started to blur. Then I called Mark. Did you see it? He asked without preamble. I see it. How does it feel? Surreal. Like I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream brought on by warehouse chemical fumes. It's real, buddy. You're officially a member of the seven-figure club. I looked through my windshield at Warehouse 47, at the loading docks where I'd spent the last 3 months of my life bent over conveyor belts and scanning guns. Gordy was probably inside right now, wondering where his favorite target for petty tyranny had gone. I need to quit my job, I said. I would hope so. No, I need to quit in style, Mark laughed. Just don't do anything that'll get you arrested. Rich or poor, assault charges are still assault charges. I walked into the warehouse at 9:15 a.m., just as the day shift was getting into full swing. Gordy was at his usual post near the supervisor's station, clipboard in hand, looking for someone to harass. Grant, he barked when he saw me. You're supposed to be gone by now. Day shift doesn't need you hanging around. You're absolutely right, Gordy. Day shift doesn't need me hanging around. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my safety vest, scanner gun, and warehouse ID badge. Then I set them on his clipboard with exaggerated care. What's this? My resignation. Effective immediately. Gordy's face went through several interesting color changes. You can't just quit in the middle of a shift cycle. There are procedures. Sue me. You think you're funny, college boy? You think this is some kind of joke? Actually, Gordy, I think it's hilarious. See, 3 months ago, I thought hitting rock bottom meant losing everything I'd worked for. Turns out rock bottom was just the foundation I needed to build something better. You're talking crazy. Maybe. Or maybe I just remembered something important. I leaned closer to Gordy, close enough to smell the coffee and disappointment on his breath. You called me irrelevant, remember? Turns out irrelevant people sometimes surprise you. I walked toward the exit, then turned back for one final moment. Oh, and Gordy, that warehouse management system you use to track productivity, I helped write the original algorithms. You've been using my code to make my life miserable. Thought you should know. The look on his face was worth 3 months of humiliation. I drove straight to the Honda dealership and traded my dying Civic for a BMW M5, cash deal. The salesman's attitude changed dramatically when I said I didn't need financing. Next stop, apartment hunting. By noon, I was signing a lease on a 2-bedroom penthouse in Harbor Towers, the most expensive building in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, granite countertops, and a view of the harbor that cost more per month than I used to make in a year. The doorman, a distinguished older man named Raymond, welcomed me with the kind of professional courtesy that money buys. Mr. Grant, welcome to Harbor Towers. If there's anything you need, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, Raymond. I have a feeling I'm going to like it here. I spent the afternoon buying furniture. Real furniture, not folding chairs and air mattresses. A king-size bed with a memory foam mattress. A sectional sofa that cost more than my warehouse wages for 2 months. A dining room table that could seat 8, even though I didn't know 8 people I wanted to have dinner with. But the best purchase was a 75-inch television that I mounted on the living room wall where I could see the harbor while I watched. As I sat in my new leather recliner that evening, eating takeout from the city's most expensive steakhouse, I couldn't help but think about the cosmic justice of it all. 3 months ago, Lisa had walked away with everything. Now I had more than everything, and she had no idea. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the style immediately. Saw you driving a BMW today. Nice car. Where'd the money come from? L. Lisa. She'd probably gotten my number from someone. Or maybe she'd never deleted it and was texting from a different phone. Either way, she'd seen me and was curious. I stared at the message for a long time, crafting and deleting responses. Part of me wanted to tell her everything, to rub her face in the irony of calling me irrelevant just months before I became a multimillionaire. Part of me wanted to explain how the software we'd built years ago had finally paid off, how her timing couldn't have been worse. But a bigger part of me wanted to let her wonder. I deleted the message without responding. Over the next few days, I settled into my new life with the enthusiasm of a man who'd been given a second chance. I bought new clothes, good clothes that fit properly and didn't smell like warehouse disinfectant. I joined an upscale gym, not because I wanted to run into Lisa's trainer boyfriend, but because I could finally afford to take care of myself again. Mark and I met for lunch at the city's most expensive restaurant, a place where the waiters wore better suits than I used to own. "You look different," he said as we settled into our table. "Money will do that?" "No, it's more than that. You look focused." "I am focused. For the first time in months, I know exactly what I want." "Which is?" "Justice." Mark raised an eyebrow. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, just balanced. Lisa took everything from me when she thought I had nothing left to give. She called me broke and irrelevant. I want her to understand exactly how wrong she was. Evan, be careful. Revenge fantasies are fun, but actually acting on them can get messy." "Who said anything about revenge? I'm talking about justice. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Revenge is emotional. Justice is mathematical." A week after my windfall, the local tech blog ran a story about the LogiFlow Pro sale. The headline read, "Local software duo strikes gold with $12 logistics sale." The article mentioned both Mark and me by name, describing me as the 60% owner and primary architect of the software. I was having coffee in my penthouse when the story went live, watching the harbor and thinking about how much my life had changed in such a short time. My phone started ringing almost immediately. The first call was from a former colleague who'd heard about the sale and wanted to catch up. The second was from a reporter wanting an interview. The third was from a financial advisor who'd somehow gotten my number and wanted to discuss investment opportunities. I ignored them all, but the fourth call was the one I'd been expecting. "Evan?" Lisa's voice was strained, artificial in its casualness. "I saw the article about your software sale. Congratulations." "Thank you." I had no idea you were still working on that project." "There's a lot you didn't know about me, Lisa. Turns out there still is." "The article said $12 million. "That's what it said." "And you own 60%? "I do." There was a long pause. I could almost hear the calculations running through her head, the realization of what those numbers meant. "Evan, I think we should talk." "Really? What about?" "About us. About what happened. I think I made some mistakes." "You think?" "I was confused, and Devon was there, and you were always working, and I wasn't thinking clearly." "You seemed pretty clear when you called me broke and irrelevant." "I was angry. I said things I didn't mean." "Which things? The part where you called me broke, or the part where you called me irrelevant?" "Both. Neither. Evan, please, can we just meet somewhere and talk?" I looked out at the harbor, at the boats bobbing in the afternoon sun, at the life I'd built for myself in the weeks since I'd learned I was rich. "I don't think so, Lisa." "Why not?" "Because 3 months ago, when I actually needed someone to talk to, you were too busy with Devon to answer your phone. Now that you've read about my bank account in the newspaper, suddenly you want to have a conversation. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you mentioning your affair before you filed for divorce. Fair would have been splitting our assets based on who actually earned them. Fair would have been not texting me about being broke and irrelevant 3 days after you took half my savings." "I can explain all of that." "I'm sure you can. You always were good at explanations." "Evan, please. I know I hurt you, but we had 15 years together. That has to count for something." "It does count for something, Lisa. It counts as 15 years I'll never get back." I hung up before she could respond. That evening, I was having dinner at Harbor Grill, the restaurant on the ground floor of my building, when I saw a familiar figure through the window. Lisa was standing on the sidewalk outside Harbor Towers, looking up at the building with an expression I couldn't quite read from my table. She stood there for almost an hour, occasionally checking her phone, obviously waiting for something or someone. Finally, she approached the building entrance. I couldn't hear the conversation from my table, but I could see Raymond, the doorman, speaking with her through the glass. After a few minutes, she walked away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. My phone buzzed with a text. I came by to see you. The doorman said you weren't expecting visitors. I typed back, he was right. Evan, please, just 5 minutes. I gave you 15 years, Lisa. I don't think I have 5 minutes left. She didn't respond, but I could see her standing under the streetlight outside, reading my message. After a moment, she looked up at my building, as if she could somehow see me through the windows and walls that separated us. Then she walked away, and I went back to my dinner. The next morning, I woke up in my king-size bed, in my penthouse apartment, $7 million richer than I'd been a week earlier. I made coffee in my gourmet kitchen and stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city wake up below me. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, all from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was getting out about the sale, and suddenly everyone wanted to be my friend. But there was one message that caught my attention. It was from Mia, Lisa's best friend and chief enabler. Saw the news about your software. Lisa's a mess. She knows she messed up. Maybe give her a chance? I deleted the message without responding. Lisa had called me broke and irrelevant. She'd taken my house, my money, and my dignity, then walked away with her trainer boyfriend like I was nothing more than an inconvenience she'd finally managed to dispose of. Now she wanted to talk. But I wasn't the same man she'd left 3 months ago. That man was broke and desperate, willing to beg for scraps of affection from a woman who'd already moved on. This man was rich and patient, with all the time in the world to watch karma work its magic. Lisa wanted to talk? She could want. I had more interesting things to do with my time, like planning what came next. 2 weeks after the tech blog story broke, I was settling into the rhythm of my new life when Mark called with an update. You need to see this, he said, sending me a link to the city's business journal. The headline read, LogiFlow Pro, the sleeping giant that woke up. It was a longer piece than the tech blog story, with more details about our company's history and the sale to Meridian Logistics. What caught my attention wasn't the rehashing of information I already knew, but the sidebar interview with industry experts predicting that our software would revolutionize supply chain management. They're calling it the deal of the decade, Mark said when I called him back. Feels good to be vindicated. It's more than vindication, Evan. This article is going to put us on the map. I've already gotten 3 calls from venture capital firms wanting to know what we're working on next. Are we working on anything next? We could be. With this kind of capital and credibility, we could build whatever we want. I was considering the possibilities when my building's concierge called. Mr. Grant, there's a woman here asking to see you. She says she's your wife. Ex-wife, I corrected, and I'm not expecting her. Should I ask her to leave? I thought about it. Lisa had been calling and texting for 2 weeks, each message more desperate than the last. She'd tried everything from apologies to accusations, from pleading to threats of legal action. I'd ignored them all. Tell her I'm not available. Of course, sir. But curiosity got the better of me. I went to my living room window and looked down at the street. Sure enough, there was Lisa, standing outside the building in what looked like an expensive new dress. She was talking animatedly to Raymond, gesturing toward the building. Even from 20 floors up, I could see the body language of desperation. This wasn't the confident woman who'd walked away with my life 3 months ago. This was someone who'd realized she'd made a terrible mistake. My phone buzzed with a text. I know you're up there. I saw you in the window. I stepped back from the glass, annoyed at myself for being so obvious. Another text. We need to talk about our divorce settlement. That got my attention. I called her. What about the divorce settlement? Evan, thank God. Listen, I've been talking to my lawyer, and there might be some issues with how we divided the assets. What kind of issues? Well, the software sale happened after our divorce was finalized, but the software was created during our marriage, so there might be community property implications. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. Are you threatening to sue me, Lisa? I'm not threatening anything. I'm just saying that maybe we should have another conversation about how to handle this situation. Let me make sure I understand. 3 months ago, you took my house, half my savings, and my dignity. You called me broke and irrelevant. Now that you've read about my windfall in the newspaper, you want to renegotiate our divorce. It's not like that. What's it like then? It's like, I made some mistakes, and maybe you did too, and now we have a chance to fix things. The only mistake I made was trusting you in the first place. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Sarah Petrus, the woman who'd handled my divorce. She was in her 60s, sharp as a blade, and had seen every trick in the book. Evan, good to hear from you. I saw the article about your software sale. Congratulations. Thanks, but I'm calling about something else. Lisa just threatened to challenge our divorce settlement. On what grounds? Community property. She thinks she's entitled to part of the software money because the software was created during our marriage. Sarah was quiet for a moment. She's not wrong that it's complicated, but she's not right either. The software was created by your company, not by you personally, and the sale happened months after your divorce was final. Plus, she already waived her rights to your business interests as part of the settlement. So she doesn't have a case? She has enough of a case to make your life expensive and annoying for the next year or two. Whether she'd win is another question entirely. What do you recommend? Ignore her. If she actually files something, we'll deal with it then. But my guess is that she's fishing, hoping you'll panic and offer her money to go away. That's not going to happen. Good, because paying her off would just encourage more demands later. After I hung up with Sarah, I found myself thinking about Lisa's desperation. The expensive dress, the public pleading, the legal threats. None of it felt like the woman I'd been married to for 15 years. That Lisa had been calculating and cold, but she'd also been confident. This felt different. I decided to do some reconnaissance. I drove to our old neighborhood, the upscale suburban development where Lisa now lived with Devon in the house that used to be mine. It was early evening, and I parked across the street with a clear view of the front yard. The house looked different. The landscaping was overgrown, and there were newspapers piling up on the driveway. One of the shutters was hanging crooked, and the paint on the front door was peeling. As I watched, Devon's car pulled into the driveway. But it wasn't the BMW he used to drive. This was an older Honda with a dent in the rear bumper and what looked like primer spots on the hood. Devon got out of the car, and even from across the street, I could see that he looked different too. Thinner, less polished. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual gym clothes, and his hair was longer and less styled. A few minutes later, Lisa came out of the house. They had what looked like an argument on the front porch, with lots of gesturing and raised voices. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the body language was clear. This was not a happy couple. The argument ended with Devon getting back in his car and driving away, leaving Lisa standing alone on the porch. I started my BMW and drove home, thinking about what I'd seen. Something was wrong in paradise, and I had a feeling it had everything to do with money. The next day, I got my answer. Mia, Lisa's friend, called me. We'd never been close, but she'd always been friendly during the marriage. Evan, I hope you don't mind me calling. Depends on why you're calling. It's about Lisa. I'm worried about her. Why? She's not doing well, financially, I mean. I thought she got half of everything in the divorce. She did, but... Mia paused. Look, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but the house needs a lot of work. The roof is leaking, the furnace is dying, and there's something wrong with the plumbing. She's gotten estimates, and it's going to cost at least $50,000 to fix everything. That's unfortunate. And Devon lost his job at the gym. Really? Why? There were some complaints from female clients. Inappropriate behavior. The gym had to let him go to avoid a lawsuit. I felt a surge of satisfaction that I tried to keep out of my voice. That's too bad. Evan, she spent most of the money from the divorce on living expenses and trying to keep up appearances. She can't afford the repairs, and Devon can't find work. She's desperate. What do you want me to do about it? Maybe just talk to her? She knows she made mistakes, but she's too proud to admit it properly. If you could just... Mia, let me stop you right there. 3 months ago, Lisa made it very clear that she didn't want to be married to me anymore. She took half my money, all my furniture, and my house, then told me I was broke and irrelevant. Now that she's having financial problems, she wants to talk? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Lisa made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. But you loved her once? I did. And she threw that love away for a personal trainer who can't keep a job. That's not my problem anymore. I hung up feeling better than I had in months. The universe was balancing its books, and I was enjoying the show. But the best was yet to come. That afternoon, I was having lunch at Harbor Grill when I saw a familiar figure through the window. It was Steve Morrison, the manager of Elite Fitness, the gym where Devon used to work. Steve was a sleazy character who'd always made inappropriate comments about the female members, and I'd never liked him. On impulse, I went outside and approached him. Steve, right? From Elite Fitness? He turned, and I could see him trying to place my face. Yeah, that's me. Do I know you? Evan Grant. I used to be married to Lisa Grant. She trains with Devon Carter. Oh, right. Steve's expression became guarded. Look, if this is about Devon, I can't really discuss personnel matters. Actually, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For firing him. I heard there were some complaints from female clients. Steve looked around nervously. Like I said, I can't discuss. I'm not asking for details. I just wanted you to know that I appreciate you doing the right thing. Devon's been sleeping with married women for years. It was only a matter of time before he crossed the wrong line. Yeah, well, we take client safety very seriously. I'm sure you do. How's business been lately? Good, real good. Why? Just curious. I'm thinking about joining a gym, and I want to make sure I pick the right one. You know, somewhere that maintains professional standards. We chatted for a few more minutes, and I could see Steve relaxing. He obviously thought I was just another potential customer, not someone with an agenda. You should come by for a tour, he said. We've got state-of-the-art equipment, professional trainers, very exclusive clientele. Sounds perfect. I'll definitely consider it. As I walked away, I was already forming a plan. Elite Fitness was the kind of place that lived and died by its reputation. If word got out that they had problems with trainers behaving inappropriately with clients, it could seriously damage their business. And I had a feeling that Devon's problems were just getting started. That evening, I was in my penthouse, enjoying a glass of wine and watching the sunset over the harbor when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Lisa's number. Hello, Lisa. Evan, we need to talk. We've already talked several times. Not on the phone. In person, please. Why? Because I have something to tell you. Something important. More important than your legal threats? Forget about that. This is different. I considered hanging up, but curiosity won out. What is it? Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? Where? Anywhere you want. Your choice. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to keep ignoring her, to let her stew in her own desperation. But another part of me was curious to see how far she'd fallen, to hear what she thought was so important that it required a face-to-face meeting. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Harbor Grill. Thank you, Evan. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Lisa. You haven't heard what I have to say. Harbor Grill was busy for a Tuesday night, filled with the kind of people who could afford $40 entrees and didn't think twice about it. I'd specifically chosen a public place for my meeting with Lisa, somewhere neutral where she couldn't make a scene without embarrassing herself. I arrived early and requested a table by the window with a clear view of the entrance. I wanted to see her before she saw me, to gauge her state of mind before we started talking. At exactly 7 o'clock, Lisa walked through the door, and I was shocked by what I saw. The woman I'd been married to for 15 years had always been meticulous about her appearance. Hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, clothes coordinated and expensive. The woman who approached my table looked like a discount version of her former self. Her hair was still blonde, but the roots were showing. Her makeup was carefully applied, but couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. Her dress was nice, but I recognized it as one she'd owned during our marriage, not something new. Evan, she said as she sat down across from me. You look good. Thank you. You look... I paused, searching for something diplomatic. You look tired. I am tired. It's been a difficult few months. The waiter approached our table, and I ordered a glass of wine. Lisa asked for water. Not drinking tonight? I asked. I'm trying to cut back on expenses. That told me everything I needed to know about her financial situation. So, I said after the waiter left, what was so important that it required a face-to-face meeting? Lisa took a deep breath. I want to apologize. For which part? All of it. The affair, the divorce, the way I treated you afterward, everything. Okay. Apology noted. That's it? Just apology noted? What did you expect? I don't know. Forgiveness, maybe? I studied her face, looking for signs of sincerity. What I saw was desperation barely held in check. Lisa, 3 months ago, you told me I was broke and irrelevant. You took my house, my money, and my dignity, then walked away with your trainer boyfriend like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. Now you want forgiveness? I was angry and hurt and not thinking clearly. About what? What were you angry and hurt about? I gave you everything you asked for. You gave me everything except yourself, Evan. You were always working, always focused on your software and your clients and your projects. I felt like I was married to a stranger. So you decided to sleep with your personal trainer. It wasn't supposed to happen. Devon was just someone to talk to, someone who listened to me. Someone who listened to you with his penis? Lisa flinched. That's crude, but accurate. The waiter returned with our drinks, and we sat in uncomfortable silence until he left. What do you want, Lisa? I want to try again. I want us to try again. I almost choked on my wine. Excuse me? I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. We had 15 good years together before everything went wrong. We built a life together. We understood each other. We were a team. Were we? Because I remember it differently. I remember working my ass off to build something while you spent your days at the gym and your nights planning your exit strategy. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I leaned forward, keeping my voice low but letting the anger show. Fair would have been you talking to me about your problems before you started sleeping with someone else. Fair would have been trying marriage counseling before you filed for divorce. Fair would have been not taking half my money when you were the one who broke our vows. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Lisa, you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Calculated, deliberate choices designed to maximize your benefit and minimize your responsibility. That's not true. Isn't it? You waited until after I'd refinanced the house to file for divorce. You moved money around before you served me with papers. You hired a lawyer and planned your strategy before you even told me you were unhappy. That's not a mistake. That's a campaign. Lisa's composure was starting to crack. I was protecting myself. From what? From me? The man who gave you everything you ever asked for? From being left with nothing if things went bad. Things did go bad, Lisa, because you made them go bad. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 15 years of marriage and 3 months of divorce settling between us like a wall. What about Devon? I asked finally. What about him? Are you still together? Lisa's face tightened. That's complicated. How complicated? He's going through some things right now. Like unemployment? She looked surprised. How did you know about that? Small town, Lisa. Word gets around. It's temporary. He'll find something else. I'm sure he will. There's always a market for personal trainers who specialize in married women. That's not what happened, isn't it? How many other wives was he training privately, Lisa? How many other marriages did he help destroy? You don't know what you're talking about. I know that Elite Fitness fired him for inappropriate behavior with female clients. I know that you're not the first married woman he seduced, and I know that you're probably not going to be the last. Lisa's hands were shaking as she reached for her water glass. He made some mistakes, but he's not the person you're making him out to be. What person am I making him out to be? A predator. If the gym shoes fit. Evan, please. This isn't about Devon. This is about us. There is no us, Lisa. You made sure of that when you decided that a 28-year-old personal trainer was more important than 15 years of marriage. I was confused and lonely and making bad decisions. You were selfish and calculating and making decisions that benefited you at my expense. Maybe both things can be true. I considered that for a moment. Maybe they could. Maybe Lisa had been genuinely unhappy and had also been calculating about how to end our marriage on the best possible terms for herself. Okay, I said. Let's say both things are true. Let's say you were confused and lonely and also selfish and calculating. Where does that leave us? It leaves us with a choice. We can keep hurting each other, or we can try to forgive each other and move forward. Move forward how? Together, as a couple, as a family. Lisa, we don't have children. We could. We're both still young enough. I stared at her, amazed by her audacity. You want to get back together, get remarried, and have children? Why not? Because 3 months ago, you told me you didn't love me anymore. Because you filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Because you took half my money and moved your boyfriend into my house. Our house. My house. I paid for it. I qualified for the mortgage. I made every payment for 8 years. The only reason your name was on the deed was because we were married. That's not how marriage works, Evan. Apparently not. Apparently marriage works by one person doing all the work while the other person plans their exit strategy. Lisa was crying now, not the pretty tears of a movie heroine, but the ugly, desperate crying of someone who'd run out of options. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I hurt you, and I know I made terrible choices, but I'm asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to give us another chance. I watched her cry and felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, no sadness, just a cold, clinical observation of cause and effect. Lisa, do you know what the difference is between regret and remorse? She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. What? Regret is wishing you hadn't gotten caught. Remorse is wishing you hadn't done it in the first place. I have remorse. No, you don't. You have regret. You regret that your affair partner turned out to be unemployable. You regret that the house needs expensive repairs. You regret that you spent your divorce settlement faster than you expected. But you don't have remorse about betraying our marriage. Because if Devon still had his job and you still had your money, you wouldn't be sitting here asking for forgiveness. That's not true, isn't it? If I hadn't sold my software, if I was still working nights in a warehouse and living in a studio apartment, would you be here right now asking to try again? Lisa didn't answer, which was answer enough. I didn't think so. I signaled for the check, and the waiter brought it over immediately. I paid with cash, leaving a generous tip. Evan, please don't leave like this. How should I leave, Lisa? With promises to think about it? With false hope that we might work things out? With some acknowledgement that we meant something to each other once. I stood up and looked down at her, this woman I'd loved for 15 years and who'd thrown that love away for a personal trainer with wandering hands. We did mean something to each other once, but that was before you decided I was broke and irrelevant. That was before you chose someone else over me. That was before you took everything I'd worked for and walked away without looking back. I'm looking back now. Too late, Lisa. I'm not the same man you left 3 months ago. That man might have taken you back. That man might have forgiven you and tried to rebuild what we had. But that man was broke and desperate and willing to accept scraps of affection from someone who'd already moved on. What about this man? This man has better things to do with his time. I walked away from the table, leaving Lisa sitting alone with her tears and her regrets. As I waited for the valet to bring my car, I could see her through the restaurant window, still crying, still sitting at our table like she was waiting for me to come back. But I wasn't coming back. Not tonight, not ever. I drove home to my penthouse, poured myself a glass of expensive whiskey, and stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the harbor. Somewhere out there, in the house I used to call home, Lisa was probably explaining to Devon why her plan to reconcile with her rich ex-husband hadn't worked out. I wondered how that conversation would go. I wondered how much longer their relationship would last now that the money was running out and the bills were piling up. I wondered, but I didn't care. My phone buzzed with a text message. Thank you for meeting with me tonight. I know you don't believe me, but I really am sorry. L. I deleted the message without responding. Then I poured myself another whiskey and started planning my next move. 3 days after my meeting with Lisa, I was having coffee in my penthouse when Mark called with interesting news. You remember Steve Morrison from Elite Fitness? The gym manager? Yeah, what about him? He called me yesterday. Apparently he's been asking around about you. What kind of asking around? The kind where he wants to know if you're really as rich as the newspapers say you are? I felt a cold smile spread across my face. Is that so? Evan, what did you do? Nothing illegal. Why? Because I know that tone of voice, and it usually means you're planning something that's going to make my life complicated. Relax, Mark. I'm just exploring some business opportunities. What kind of business opportunities? The kind that involve buying things. After I hung up with Mark, I spent the morning researching Elite Fitness. It was a privately held company with 3 locations in the city, catering to upscale clientele who could afford premium membership fees. According to their financial records, which I obtained through a business intelligence service, they were profitable, but not spectacularly so. More importantly, they were leveraged. The company carried significant debt from their recent expansion, and their cash flow was dependent on maintaining their reputation as an exclusive, high-end fitness destination. I called my investment advisor, Patricia Chen, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in acquiring distressed businesses. Patricia, I want to buy a gym. A gym? That's not usually your kind of investment. It's not an investment. It's a hobby. Expensive hobby. Which gym? Elite Fitness. 3 locations, privately held, decent revenue but high debt load. I know Elite Fitness. They've got a good reputation, but the owner's been looking to sell for a while. He's getting close to retirement age. How close? Close enough that he might take a reasonable offer if it came with the right terms. What would constitute a reasonable offer? For all 3 locations? Probably 8 to 10 million, depending on how motivated he is to sell. Make an offer. How much? Whatever it takes. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Evan, buying a business out of spite is usually a bad idea. Who said anything about spite? The tone of your voice. Just make the offer, Patricia. While Patricia worked on acquiring Elite Fitness, I turned my attention to other matters. Specifically, I wanted to know more about Devon's situation and Lisa's finances. I hired a private investigator named Jack Russell, a former police detective who specialized in background checks and asset searches. Jack was thorough, discreet, and expensive, exactly what I needed. I want to know everything, I told him during our meeting at his downtown office. Financial records, employment history, legal troubles, personal relationships. Everything. Both subjects? Both subjects. This is about your divorce? This is about closure. Jack's report arrived a week later, and it was even better than I'd hoped. Devon Carter was in serious financial trouble. He'd been living beyond his means for years, financing his lifestyle with credit cards and personal loans. His car was leased, his apartment was month to month, and he owed money to several creditors. The loss of his job at Elite Fitness had pushed him over the edge into genuine desperation. Lisa's situation was almost as bad. The house needed extensive repairs that she couldn't afford, and she'd been borrowing against her credit cards to cover basic living expenses. Her divorce settlement was nearly gone, spent on maintaining the lifestyle she'd become accustomed to during our marriage. But the most interesting part of Jack's report was the section about Devon's employment history. Elite Fitness wasn't the first gym that had fired him for inappropriate behavior with female clients. He'd been let go from 2 previous positions for similar reasons, and there were rumors about other incidents that hadn't resulted in formal complaints. Devon Carter wasn't just a personal trainer who'd made some mistakes. He was a serial predator who targeted vulnerable married women, and Lisa had been his latest victim. Armed with this information, I called Patricia. "How's the gym acquisition going?" "Better than expected. The owner accepted our offer. $8.5 million for all 3 locations, plus assumption of existing debt." "When do we close?" "Next week. But Evan, I have to ask, what are you planning to do with 3 gyms?" "Run them better than the previous owner." "Do you know anything about running gyms?" "I know enough." The closing took place on a Friday afternoon in Patricia's law office. The seller, Robert Morrison, Steve's father as it turned out, was a tired-looking man in his 70s who seemed relieved to be getting out of the business. "You're getting a good operation," he told me as we signed the papers. "My son Steve has been managing the day-to-day operations for the past 5 years. He knows the business inside and out." "I'm sure he does," I replied. On Monday morning, I walked into the main Elite Fitness location wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, looked confused. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Steve Morrison." "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm the new owner." Ashley's eyes widened. Oh, let me get him for you right away." Steve appeared a few minutes later, looking nervous and trying to hide it. "Mr. Grant, right? My dad said you were taking over the business." "That's right. I wanted to meet with you to discuss the transition." "Of course. Should we go to my office?" Steve's office was a cluttered mess of invoices, membership contracts, and fitness magazines. He cleared some papers off a chair so I could sit down. "So," he said, settling behind his desk, "Dad says you're some kind of software guy?" "I was. Now I'm some kind of gym owner." "Right. Well, you're getting a great business. We've got over 2,000 active members across all 3 locations, and our retention rate is above industry average." "That's good to hear. Tell me about your staff." "Great team. Most of our trainers have been with us for years. Very professional, very dedicated." "What about Devon Carter?" Steve's face went pale. "Devon? He's not with us anymore." "I know. I want to know why." "There were some complaints from members. Nothing serious, just some misunderstandings." "What kind of misunderstandings?" "You know how it is with personal training. Sometimes the relationships between trainers and clients can get a little complicated." "Complicated how?" Steve was sweating now. "Look, Mr. Grant, Devon's situation was handled appropriately. We investigated the complaints, and we made the decision that was best for the business." "By firing him." "By letting him go?" "Yes." "How many complaints were there?" "I don't remember exactly." "Steve, I own this business now. That means I own all the records, all the files, and all the liability for anything that happened before I took over. So I'm going to ask you again. How many complaints were there?" Steve opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. 7 formal complaints over the past 2 years. 7? And you kept him on staff? We talked to him each time, and he promised it wouldn't happen again. "What finally made you fire him?" "One of the complainants threatened to go to the police." I felt a surge of anger that surprised me with its intensity. "The police?" "She said Devon that he'd touched her inappropriately during a training session. She said if we didn't fire him, she was going to file charges." "Did she file charges?" "No. We let Devon go, and she agreed to drop the matter." I stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the main gym floor. "Steve, do you understand that this business is built on trust, that our members pay premium prices because they expect a safe, professional environment?" "Of course." "And do you understand that by keeping Devon on staff despite multiple complaints, you put every member of this gym at risk?" "We handled each complaint appropriately." "You handled them by covering them up and hoping they'd go away. We followed proper procedures." I turned back to Steve, and he must have seen something in my expression that scared him, because he started talking faster. Look, Oh, Grant, I know it looks bad, but Devon was one of our most popular trainers. He brought in a lot of revenue, and most of his clients loved him. Most of his female clients, you mean? Well, yes, but that's not unusual in this business. Steve, you're fired. Oh, what? You're fired. Clean out your desk and turn in your keys. You can't fire me. I've been running this place for 5 years. And you've been running it into the ground. How many lawsuits do you think we're going to face when word gets out that you knowingly kept an intimate predator on staff? Devon wasn't a predator. 7 complaints, Steve. 7 women who felt unsafe in your gym because of one trainer, and you did nothing about it until someone threatened to call the police. Steve's face was red with anger and panic. My father's not going to like this. Your father doesn't own this business anymore. I do. And the first thing I'm doing is making sure that what happened with Devon never happens again. What about my severance package? Read your contract. You were terminated for cause. Steve gathered his personal belongings and left without another word. As soon as he was gone, I called an emergency meeting with the remaining staff. The trainers, managers, and support staff gathered in the main exercise room, looking nervous and confused. I stood in front of them, still wearing my business suit, feeling like a general addressing troops before battle. My name is Evan Grant, and I'm the new owner of Elite Fitness. I want to be very clear about something from the beginning. This business is going to operate with the highest standards of professionalism and safety. I paused, looking around the room at faces that ranged from curious to worried. Some of you may have heard about the issues we've had with inappropriate behavior from staff members. That ends now. Any trainer who engages in inappropriate conduct with members will be terminated immediately, and we will cooperate fully with any legal action that members choose to pursue. A young trainer raised his hand. What constitutes inappropriate conduct? Any physical contact that goes beyond what's necessary for proper training technique. Any personal relationship with a member that extends beyond the professional context. Any behavior that makes a member feel uncomfortable or unsafe. What if a member comes on to us? You maintain professional boundaries and report the incident to management. If you can't handle that responsibility, this isn't the job for you. I spent the next hour outlining new policies and procedures, making it clear that the culture of the gym was going to change dramatically. Some staff members seemed relieved, others looked worried about their job security. After the meeting, I drove to the second Elite Fitness location and repeated the process, then the third. By the end of the week, I'd fired 3 more employees and instituted a zero-tolerance policy for inappropriate behavior. The changes didn't go unnoticed in the local fitness community. Word spread quickly that Elite Fitness had new ownership and new standards. Some members canceled their memberships, uncomfortable with the stricter environment. But more members signed up, drawn by the promise of a safe, professional experience. 2 weeks after I'd taken over the gyms, I was in my penthouse when Jack Russell called. You asked me to keep an eye on your subjects. I've got some updates. Go ahead. Devon Carter was arrested last night. I felt a surge of satisfaction. For what? Intimate assault. One of his former clients from Elite Fitness decided to press charges after all. Which client? A woman named Jennifer Walsh. Married, 2 kids, thought she was getting fitness training and got something else instead. What's the evidence? Text messages, mostly. Carter had been sending her inappropriate messages for months, trying to convince her to meet him outside the gym. She kept them all. What about Lisa? She's in worse shape than before. The house is going into foreclosure, and she's behind on her credit card payments. Word is she's looking for a job. What kind of job? Anything she can get. She applied to be a receptionist at a dental office last week. I hung up with Jack and poured myself a glass of wine. Through my floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the harbor and the city beyond, all the lights twinkling in the darkness like fallen stars. Somewhere out there, Lisa was dealing with the consequences of her choices. Devon was sitting in a jail cell, finally facing the reality of his actions, and I was sitting in my penthouse, rich and successful and completely satisfied with how things had turned out. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Heard about Devon's arrest. I know you had something to do with it. You've destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I didn't destroy your life, Lisa. You did that all by yourself when you decided I was broke and irrelevant. She didn't respond, but I didn't need her to. The conversation was over, just like our marriage, just like any possibility of reconciliation. I deleted her message and went back to enjoying my wine and my view and my perfectly orchestrated revenge. 3 months ago, Lisa had taken everything from me and walked away with her younger lover, confident that she'd won. She'd called me broke and irrelevant, certain that I would never recover from the devastation she'd inflicted. She was wrong about everything. I wasn't broke. I was richer than I'd ever been. I wasn't irrelevant. I was successful enough to buy and restructure businesses on a whim, and I wasn't defeated. I was victorious in ways she couldn't even comprehend. The software Mark and I had built years ago had finally paid off, just when I needed it most. The timing was so perfect it felt like destiny, like the universe had been saving this windfall for exactly the right moment. Lisa had gambled everything on Devon and lost. She'd traded 15 years of marriage for a few months with a predator who was now facing criminal charges. She'd given up financial security for the illusion of passion, and now she was broke and desperate while I was living in luxury. The irony was beautiful in its completeness. The woman who'd called me irrelevant was now irrelevant herself, reduced to begging for forgiveness from the man she'd betrayed. The woman who'd thought she was trading up had actually traded everything for nothing, and the man she'd left for dead was now more alive than he'd ever been. I raised my glass to the harbor, to the city, to the beautiful complexity of justice finally served. To irrelevance, I said aloud, then drank deeply and smiled at the lights below.